good morning, and welcome to another episode of PSYCHED. I'm your host, Sule A. Joseph, a counseling psychologist by profession. Today we have a sombering topic for you. Today we look at a secret, hidden crisis, something that has been gradually increasing during this period of the pandemic and has been endemic even prior to the pandemic. What are we talking about? Today we talk suicide. But before we get into all of that, and I have a very sobering conversation with today's guest, let's get into my favorite topic, my favorite segment rather, Psyched to Know.
Psyched to Know, brought to you by Sule Joseph and Associates.
In Trinidad and Tobago, from 2012 to 2017, we've had over 80 men each year commit suicide. In that same time span, approximately 20 women per year also took their own lives, giving Trinidad and Tobago an average of 100 suicides annually. While this dropped significantly the following year, reports indicate that this number increased drastically during the pandemic. We'll be discussing this topic and more when we come back from the break.
Catch the playoffs and the finals of the Dream 11 cricket tournament on Friday from 11 a.m. only on WESN Content Capital, your home for cricket.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix-It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
It may seem like the hardest thing to do right now, but we all need each other to wear a mask, wash our hands, watch our physical distance, and stay at home. We need you safe. Together we can make the difference. Together we can curb the spread of COVID-19. So let's be responsible in our actions. The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
We see persons every day. Some people we think we know quite intimately, and others we know casually. And we assume that maybe like us, everybody's doing A-OK or finding a way to survive or feel good about themselves during the pandemic. But what about some persons who have it a little bit more difficult? The people who plaster smiles on their faces, even though they may be going through the greatest of tribulations and trials. What about people who feel sometimes that they've reached the end of their rope? They've had enough. There's no escape. Well, before you condemn and judge, maybe, what we know about persons who have attempted suicide or suicide ideation as we call it in the practice. That is, persons who think about ending their lives or have the thoughts that pervade their mind regularly, or think about acting it out. What we know about that is, usually this occurs when people feel as though there's no other way out, when they feel totally trapped. And perhaps ending it may be the only way to solve some of these problems. Join us today to have a conversation about this and share personal experiences. By the way, I think is very brave. I'm not sure I might have been able to do that. But joining us to have that conversation and share experiences is Miss Latoya Rigu. That's Latoya with the small T. Miss Latoya Rigu. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, Latoya.
You're welcome.
All right. I know the nerves a bit.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll try to make this as comfortable as possible, having a conversation about something as serious and as intimate as suicide ideation on a public space. But still, you know, how much sharing your story and your information could save and help others. Because, I mean, you are with us today.
Yeah. And
from interacting with you, you seem like a very bubbly, fun-loving, you know, smiley, always smiling.
I am.
A very, very bubbly, fun-loving type person. So tell us a little bit about your story.
So from my teenage years, I would have always felt as though I am in this world alone. I would have experienced certain situations that would have made me feel completely alone, even though there are people around me. So there was this time where I decided that I'm fed up of life, I'm fed up of being invisible, and I decided to cut my wrist. At home, there was a surgical blade, and so I took the surgical blade and started on my right wrist. Unfortunately, in the moment, I would say unfortunately, because at the spur of the moment, I wanted to die. Right. So unfortunately, in that moment, even though I tried to cut my wrist, no blood was coming out. So I got afraid. I was frightened at that point.
So fortunately, unfortunately?
Fortunately, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah. From there, after that experience, I was so afraid that I never attempted it again until in my marriage, I was married. I was in a narcissistic, abusive marriage, and in the marriage,
how long was that?
For 5 years. For
5 years, okay.
Yeah. And in the marriage, my self-esteem, self-worth, self-love, everything was beaten out of me. And
you mean beaten out verbally or beaten out?
Verbally and physically.
Okay.
Mentally, everything.
Everything, to the full package.
The full package of abuse.
Yeah.
And so I would put on a plastic over my face and smile. And because everybody's accustomed to me being a smiley, bubbly person, they didn't detect that I was going through what I was going through.
Right.
So there was this period where he told me it is better that I kill myself and done. And he slammed the car door and he exited the vehicle. And in that moment, those words coming from somebody that you love or loved, it pierces your heart. And in that moment, a fit of rage, thoughts, everything just came crashing down. And I said to myself, well, you know what, maybe it's true. Maybe the world will be a better place without me because, you know, nobody is detecting that I'm suicidal. Nobody is seeing me. Regardless, the one person who I thought would have been there for me just told me it's better I kill myself and done. So I plotted in my mind where I'm going to kill myself with my vehicle, and I started driving to that place. And for some strange reason, one of my friends contacted me, and I answered the phone, and in answering the phone, I didn't say anything. But from me not saying anything, answering a phone, she knew something was wrong. Right. And so she started asking questions like, where are you? What is happening? And I wasn't answering, but she could have heard me crying. And at that moment, she jumped in her vehicle and she decided to find the route that I'm accustomed using, because she knew where I was coming from. And she found me by the lights on Tumpuna Junction in Arima. The plan was that I was going to end my life by the walkover, by driving as fast as I can into the walkover. That way I wouldn't hurt another driver.
So you were thinking about everybody else's safety except yours?
Yes, I was.
Okay, all right.
And she found me there, and in that moment she started yelling, "Come out of the car, get out of the car, get out of the vehicle." And I stopped the vehicle on the shoulder, and at that moment she came out of her vehicle and she started banging on the glass, "Get out of the car, get out of the vehicle, I needed to come out of the vehicle." And she took me to the Arima hospital, where she requested a psychiatrist to see me, to be able to deal with the situation, because she knew in that moment, the way that I was, the shaking, the crying, the bawling, she couldn't deal with it. It was beyond her. Unfortunately, there were none available at the time, and I told her I needed to leave. And it was in that moment where I realized how badly I have reached. But
to the point, that's when the realization struck you, hit you at that point.
Yeah, and it also made me realize that there is somebody that cares. So her presence being there, finding me on the highway and being there, made me realize that I'm not in this alone.
Right.
Because I would have been feeling like I'm in it alone completely. And that would have been my last suicidal encounter.
So there were others before that?
Yes, there were. I tried hanging myself. The rope burst off from the ceiling. I tried cutting myself. I tried cutting myself more than once. The last time I got scared when I didn't really see blood. And then it was that time where I knew, like I know that that night, if she didn't find me, I would not have been here today.
So now there's a thing that Trinidadians do, or we say as Trinidadians, right? If somebody isn't successful, it's just, they're looking for attention. They're not serious about it. It's just attention that the person is looking for. What kind of space mentally? Because you did mention that you felt alone. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Where were you mentally? What did you feel? You felt alone. You felt worthless. I think some of the things you were saying.
Yeah.
What kind of mental space were you in?
In that moment, picture yourself in a dark room where you're not even seen in front of you, but you know that you are there. You are in this room and you can't see anything, you can't see anybody. That's how you feel. You feel like nobody will understand, nobody will know, nobody's seeing you, even if they're right next to you. That's how you feel. So it's a state of mind, really, but it's a place where it's a really low place where, in my view, you have to be in that position to understand,
it.
A survivor. Because even if you're in that position, as I am sitting next to you here, if I was in that position, you speaking to me would go through one ear and come out the next, because of that empty space that I am in. So even though I had a lot of people around me, a lot of friends, a lot of family, and a child, they didn't matter. Nothing mattered in that moment, because I felt as though my back was against the wall. I felt as though everything was coming down on me. I felt like there's no end to this other than me taking my life.
Endless darkness.
Yeah.
And the only way out of that endless darkness was just to end it all.
Yeah.
I think because I can picture that, and I think you've painted a very graphic picture for persons at home to have a better understanding. Yeah. So how do you move then from being in this dark room where you can't hear anything, you can't see anybody, none of your senses actually working. That would be very scary for me. I could picture it, that would be a very scary experience. Being in a darkened room. How do you move from that to now being this very bubbly, cheery person who, how do you escape from that dark room?
So, like I said, that last encounter made me realize that there is somebody that cares. There is somebody that is out there that cares. I know family and friends care. Like, everybody would believe that, a family member or a friend will care about you.
Right.
But in the moment, like I said, you wouldn't feel it. But just that friend showing up in that moment made me realize that somebody actually cares. And so that same friend would have reached out to my job concerning the employee assistance program with psychologists and booked an appointment for me to attend and then dragged me to the appointment.
That's a counselor.
Yes. And it was in the counseling session that I realized how badly off I was and how low I thought about myself. And, one of the questions the person asks is, do you believe you're beautiful? And I plain out said no. If you ask me that now, I tell you, yes, I am. But we had to work, so I had to go through a lot of counseling sessions. I am a believer in Christ, so I would have prayed. So I coupled praying with the counseling. And gradually I was climbing out of the dark place until here I am now.
Because another aspect of us as Trinbagonians is that we like to say, you know what, pray about it. Just pray about it. Don't do anything else. Just pray about it. It will work itself out. You're depressed, pray about it. You're angry, pray about it. Just pray about it. It will work itself out.
Yeah.
And I like how you talked about not just praying about it, but having that faith with works. Yeah. So seeking professional assistance, going to a therapist, getting counseling, but also praying about it as well.
Yeah.
So both hand in hand.
Both are hand in hand. Faith without works is dead.
and we turn this into a preacher program. And so together, those two things had helped you. And as well, of course, you also had a support network, a support base.
Yes. So I had two friends who would have been through it with me. So they would have also been with me along that healing process.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. So now you're in a space where you can say to persons at home and those who are listening at home who may feel that they are now in a dark room, that they're in a dark space, they can't hear anyone, you can't hear anyone, you can't see, feel, touch anything at all. You just feel like you're in this enclosed dark space and there's no end in sight to the darkness. What do you say to them? How do they come out of it? You used counseling and prayer, and your faith. How do they at home, what words of guidance you have for them? How do they come out of it?
I would say pray, firstly, even though you feel as though you're praying and you're not being heard. But I'll also say seek counseling, seek an avenue for counseling. And as well, this is not the end, and this too shall pass. It's just a season. Even though the season seems really dark and scary, you can come out of it. I am living testimony to this. I'm here today. It is not an easy journey because you have to face everything. In the counseling session, I had to face everything head on. And so it was not an easy journey to reach where I am, but I'm thankful that I've been through it. So seek counseling. There are different avenues to getting counseling within the country. Pray. Not ask people for prayer, but you and yourself, in your alone time, pray. And know that you're not in it alone. And there are those who overcome, and there are those who will continue to overcome. So be an overcomer with it.
Excellent. So it's not the end. As we mentioned, I know again that persons when you're at home who may feel as though this is it. There's no way out. You don't know how to escape that abusive relationship. You feel as though things keep happening to you in a negative manner. And you know, before we started the program, there's this saying in Trinidad, negative things or bad things happen in threes. So it's not one thing. It's not one thing happens, but it's one thing and then another thing and another thing. And after that, correct. Yeah. And after that, you get this sinking feeling and you feel as though nothing will ever go right. Yeah. You feel lost, you feel disconnected. And so one of the things I wanted to point out is that I'm really happy that you were able to come and have this conversation this morning, because it says, it's not me talking about a textbook possibility of overcoming the sadness and depression that leads to suicide ideation, but it's someone who is a survivor, someone who has been in that dark space, been in that box, felt as though there's no way out and found a way out. So to me, you are a motivational story. You're a story to persons who are currently feeling that way, persons who currently feel as though there's no way out and as though there's an avalanche of negative things just happening to them, right? And still find a way to make it happen. Yeah. I know you were saying that on your way here, this morning, a bunch of negative things kept happening.
Yes.
So that some force out there clearly didn't want you to come and send your message. Yeah. A bunch of negative things happened to you this morning that made you feel as though you couldn't.
Yeah, I nearly cancelled on coming. Yeah.
But somehow you were able to again muster the strength to overcome those challenges.
I looked at the positive aspect of maybe this story will help somebody who is battling at home. Yeah. And I didn't want to be that person where I don't come out and speak to help that person out and let them see that there is a survivor out there, and be selfish and just remain home, and then that person takes their life or continues in the spiral of darkness. So here I am.
Well, two things quickly I want to ask you before we close. Yeah. One, you had mentioned that you wore a plastic smile.
Yeah.
And so that even though you were surrounded by loved ones, so there may be persons at home right now suffering with significant amounts of depression and contemplating suicide, and wearing a plastic smile.
Yeah.
So for those, how are persons around may be able to detect from your experience?
Each person who suffers with depression and suicidal tendencies or thoughts always leaves a clue.
Okay. So there were clues that you left?
There's always a clue, or there's always something that they will either say or they will do to give you a hint that I am not in a good place.
So you want to share with us maybe one of your clues, maybe just one? What was a clue that you had?
One of my cues would have been I did not do eye contacts. I would not have watched somebody in their eye. I would have always looked away. And it was because of what I was going through. Right. That it was hard to face somebody face to face. So that was one of the cues. Another cue would have been, I would have spoken very negatively about certain situations. And, then I would have laughed and give this laugh. So they would not have picked up on it.
So you used humor and laughter to cover.
Yeah. So one or two persons would have said to me, that laugh though, is it a nerve-wracking laugh? What that laugh signifies? And I would have just brushed it off. So there's always a hint and a cue to someone who's wearing a plastic smile.
Okay. So thanks. So in closing, a very short piece of advice that you'd want to leave with persons at home, the viewers who are looking on, perhaps somebody who feels as though they're in that space, what is one key piece of advice you'd want to leave with them?
You are not in it alone. And there are people who love you. And there are people who will hurt if you do what the thoughts are telling you to do. So hold on and look for the positive in every situation. There's always one positive that you can find in every situation. Just look for that and hold on to that for their life.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thanks very much for coming on this morning. Thanks for sharing your story with us. I'm hoping that somebody at home hears this story and recognizes that you are not alone, that you are loved, that there's one positive light, according to Latoya, that you can hold on to and pull yourself out of this. It is possible. There are numbers that you can contact. Please, for anybody who is out there and feel as though you are suffering with severe depression or suicidal thoughts, there's Lifeline. You can check them out on the internet, on social media, or you can reach out to any counseling psychologist, any counselor, any therapist, anybody. Just talk to somebody, anybody. And if you feel as though some of the signs and symptoms that we've discussed today you may be recognizing in somebody else, please don't leave them alone. Please. Better safe than sorry. Take them to see a professional. Until next week, please God, same time, same place. Know that you are loved, you are cherished, and you are special. See you next week, right here on WESN. Stay psyched.